Welcome, everyone, to another. Well, this is a Not Conscious, right? Not
This
Conscious.
is
We got a
not
little
conscious.
friends. We got a little league of friends. This is a good one. This is going to be a great one. First of all, we've got my friend Zach over here. Then we've got Andrew over here. But super special guest. Gentlemen, can we introduce special guest, please?
Mr.
Let's
Per
hear it.
Bylund.
Mr. Per Bylund. All right, bring it up. Thank you so much, Per, for joining us again. This is a Not Conscious, but we have our friends Andrew and Zach on today. Guys, welcome. The floor is yours, man. We've got questions. Jump in the chat, jump in Rumble. We're here to take all the questions that you can bring us.
All right.
Hmm.
So
Jump in there, Andrew.
We got to start.
AI. What do you think is going to happen with AI when it comes to the economic perspective? I guess to start off with that. That's kind of a broad question.
Okay. Yeah, the economic perspective on AI is pretty simple, I think. I mean, AI is a tool. AI is capital, an economist would call it. So, I mean, it's going to make us more productive doing certain things. It's going to replace us doing certain things, just like the spinning jenny or just like the automobile or just like anything else, right? So, economically speaking, it's not really really very interesting, I could say, right? Because it happens all the time with any kind of useful invention. It's going to be put into use where it can, and then it's going to replace people doing manual tasks and simple tasks that it can do better, so that we can find jobs elsewhere, whether that is copy editing or programming or teaching or whatever it might be. But AI might be able to take over those things and produce those things much cheaper. So you could get like an excellent, targeted, personalized education, say, at basically zero cost, because the AI is just going to be with you and teach you in the way that fits with you perfectly. And of course, the AI, unlike a professor, is not going to get upset when you ask for the 25th time, what does that mean again? Right? So an AI can just keep on doing it. So in any such sort of scenario where you can have an AI economically, it's just going to enhance and improve the production of society overall.
So what goes on the economic aspect, the political aspect, when it comes to the regulatory oversight of AI? Where's your foresight on how regulatory oversight is going to be used on AI?
Well, I think one guess that I think is sort of obvious is that the government is going to try to make as much use as possible of AI for its own purposes. So that's going to happen.
Of course, yeah.
I watched a recent interview with Sam Altman at OpenAI where he said that the only regulation they are asking for is to give people ownership of their own data, basically, and protect AI from sharing data with government. Because the way it is now, the government can just basically have a simple court order and they can get everything that you ever asked an AI and whatever else. And apparently they're asking for more protection, right? So you're basically like a source or something like that. So they can't give it, and they're not. They shouldn't have to give up all your data. And if that sort of regulation, I'm all in favor of, because that's regulating the government's power, right? It's not really regulating AI. And I was a little bit surprised when I heard it, because usually I would expect someone in that space to say that, well, we need to have all these restrictions placed on us, which you can. I mean, it sounds good for the economically illiterate, right? Because it sounds like, oh, we want the government to help us be good. But what they really mean
That's
is
all the government does. It helps. That's all it does.
Yeah, of course. Right. But what it really means in reality is help us increase the costs of entry so that we can be the monopolists, and without any entrants, any entrepreneurs, any competitors that might enter the scene later on, right? For the same reason that both Amazon and Walmart are lobbying for higher minimum wage. It's exactly the same thing. They want to raise the bar for future competitors that are even better. So I was surprised that he.
And we talked about that when the minimum wage was one we specifically talked about in the last podcast. How they're why not just pay them more? Well, they want everyone to pay more because they don't want to cut into their profits. They're going to cut in everyone, so they lobby for it. Makes them look like heroes. But this is a question I had with Altman. Was your Altman one the one with Tucker? Because I think he mentioned that on the Tucker one as well about protecting the AI. Some of the stuff he said during that conversation was a little scary too, though, because it's my opinion. Per Marcus Andreessen, they've already chosen who is going to be the players. So considering the government's already chosen the players, I think they've already chosen the rules. So to hear someone like Sam Altman say that sounds really good, but it's very hard to actually believe that he's lobbying for the thing to actually allow him to not get funded by the government who's going to use that data, right? Obviously the one hand washes the other, right? So what are your thoughts on that manipulation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the government is involved in everything we do always, right? And if there's a new technology, the government's going to be there and try to push it in one direction or the other just to make sure that it benefits the government. And most of these things, I mean, today we only talk about software, basically. I mean, you mentioned Mark Andreessen and his prediction that software is going to eat the world. And of course, software is eating the world, right? And software is, of course, copyrights and patents and things like that. So they're already protected. So in a sense, that whoever is first and gets a patent and gets to sort of claim the space already has government protection. So in that sense, they're already chosen. And I don't think that the government necessarily has a preference for which entity, as long as it's a controlled or controllable entity. And
right, that's the thing, is just that Sam's in that space. Right, just that he's in that space says a lot, and he's already kind of been chosen, already agreed with their ideology in a general sense anyway. I would think he's already willing to play ball, you know.
Yeah, and he's been able to attract a lot of funding from different companies like Microsoft and things like that. I think Microsoft put in $14 billion, something like that, to
something like that. Yeah.
I mean, does that mean? Yeah, just because they were first doesn't mean that their technology is necessarily the right one or the better one or the most efficient one or what have you, right? But because of patents and everything else, it's going to be really hard to not only catch up with, but actually leapfrog them, right?
Yeah, I know that,
and that's where. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
I know that I know it says OpenAI, but they close source their software, and really they index everything that you search on OpenAI because they don't. There's a setting people don't call them flip. So you can go and search on Google. I have done this myself because I don't have OpenAI, but this is what I've heard through like news sources and stuff like that. And you can search for conversations, and the government has been basically reverse searching what people have been searching and using that for like warrants and stuff like that to go after people who they deem has done things inappropriate. So that's definitely something people should be aware of.
And that's where I look at the establishment of using like AI. Yeah, like the justification of trying to balance everything out. Like that's where like we need to start adapting towards blockchain, like because of the transparency, the security, it's there, and you can adapt and innovate mechanisms to where you don't have a backdoor for the government to get in. Like obviously you can create that, it's software, but you can also find ways to decentralize that and keep it open to a certain extent, except for the government.
Yeah, but I mean, there are many things that we would want, right? One is to have really great encryption, so it's only whoever is a party to the discussion can see it, right? Or whoever you give permission to it. And also, you should be decentralized, so you don't have a bottleneck or sort of a one place where you can meddle with the data. So it needs to be decentralized and only local data. And of course, it should be fast and it should be intelligent and all this other stuff too. I think we're going to get many of these things, but I'm not sure about encryption necessarily. And I mean, And the NSA has the X key score thing, right, where they can where they record basically every keystroke on every computer and every software everywhere, right? That Ed Snowden uncovered for us years ago. And if that is the case, then it doesn't really matter if the communication is encrypted, because they're still going to have everything that you typed and everything that everybody else typed. So it doesn't really
The
matter.
ship.
Well, it's
the
interesting. Thomas
spyware.
Massey talked about that. He talked about Signal, and he's like, "It's funny you're using Signal. They have it at the key. They have it at the keystroke level. They don't have it at the They're not decrypting the signal. They have your actual what you're typing in. It's like you don't even realize how intrusive they actually are in every part of our life."
I was they ship spyware and stuff like that on hard drives in the firmware, so they can keep an eye on everybody. They have special imprinted code and printer paper. Pardon me. They have 20 ways to Sunday to get to you if they want to track you down for whatever that they want to do, and it's kind of a crazy thing that they're at that level.
Well, might it be the case that the firm in firmware is for the firm, CIA?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's just call it CIA-ware going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Company man. Always the company man.
Right.
So Per, I'm sorry, we got to reset because we act like we're long friends because you've been so kind and generous with your time. Could you introduce yourself to the world? Because you could introduce yourself better than I ever could because you got so many accolades, so many things. I think we counted 87 books, I think is what you counted when you sent me a message. We were talking about close to 100. But could you tell us a little bit about yourself? We'd love to hear that because a lot of people don't know who you are and where, the institute that you represent, all these other things, because we're here about spreading the message of liberty, freedom, all these things. And the best way to do it is to get it economically first, because debt is slavery. We know that. So we want to start with our money and our wallet. And that's why we always invite you. So please tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we can certainly continue. So thank you.
Sure. So, I mean, like any person, there are plenty of things that you can say, right? I mean, one is simply that, well, what do I work with? I'm a professor of entrepreneurship at Oklahoma State University, where I have a chair and things like that, where I teach undergraduate and PhD level courses and do a lot of research and stuff like that. I'm an author of books. You mentioned that with the articles and books and book reviews in scholarly journals and stuff like that. It was it 87? Yeah, maybe something like that. But I have 4 monographs or books that I published. I've edited 3 or something like that, and I have a 5th one coming next year. I'm originally from Sweden. I've been a libertarian anarchist since the fall of 1998. And in 1999, I founded the website anarchism.net, which was supposed to be sort of a from the beginning, it was one of the very first anarcho-capitalist websites because there was nothing else. This was the 90s, after all, right? But then there were other websites that were sort of sprouting, and we couldn't really keep up with the competition. It was me and 2 other guys in Sweden, and I did most of the writing and everything like that. So it sort of transitioned into, and it followed my own development too. So I pretty quickly found Samuel Edward Konkin's work on counter-economics and agorism, and I was really influenced by that, and also individualist anarchism. So I I sort of shifted the focus of the website to become an anarchism without adjectives kind of site, where anyone who is an anarchist could hang out. And we had a forum that was a discussion forum that was pretty darn active for many years. Not anymore. I haven't updated the site for 20 years probably at this point. But let's see what else. As part of that, I got in touch with the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. And through them, I refined my libertarian worldview, but also had the opportunity to learn Austrian economics. And I've been to a bunch of their events. I was there when I was in grad school studying economics in the PhD program. I spent 3 summers at the Mises Institute as a research fellow, and it worked on my dissertation and things like that. So basically, my first book is based on my dissertation, which is actually based on my studies at the Mises Institute. So now, since a few years, I'm a senior fellow there, which means I speak at a bunch of their events and I represent them a little bit here and there, I suppose, and things like that. Other than that, I think that covers the important parts.
Yeah, absolutely. That perfect introduction. Like I said, there's so many parts to it. So, gentlemen, I'll let you continue because like I said, we just wanted to kind of bring you into the fold of who you are, so we can introduce you to another larger audience.
Well, the jump into another topic at hand, I think it coordinates very closely to what agorism represents in its praxis. But have you ever heard of distributism, Per?
I've heard of it, but it doesn't really ring much of a bell.
Well, the concept is it's based around Catholic ethics, and it was coined at the right around the turn of the 20th century, 1880s, 1890s, by Pope Leo XIII. And it's effectively taking the good things about capitalism, private ownership, and the good things of socialism, as in like solidarity, and combining it on a concept of stewardship on God's great earth. So private property is imperative, cooperatives and competition is a must in the market setting, but yet we have a basis on needing to help our fellow man, like get up on their feet like a true Catholic, a true Christian human being should do in the follow. So, and my question is like, could we get to that point in our society to gravitate towards that concept of reality, or have we just gone so far on the extremes of capitalism or the extremes of socialism?
Well, I hesitate to call that socialism, right? Because being a generous, moral, kind person, of course, that makes capitalism better. It also makes socialism better because you're just better people, and so it's not really socialism in itself. I think the issue that we have now is that we have a monstrosity in the middle of society that is sort of a puppeteer in a sense, and tries to change our behavior daily by using force, and it's undermining our ability to help others because we have less wealth than we otherwise would have, but also less time and less interest as well, because we're not really, and this really goes back to some Keynesian sort of view of the world, right? That since they are trying to push interest rates down and they're trying to make us consume right now rather than invest in the future, our time preference is really high. And that means that we don't really have a time or even an interest in investing in long relationships, right? So the result.
It's kind of you ever hear the microwave generation, Per? Are you familiar with that? The microwave generation? Have you ever heard that?
No.
So it's kind of what you're talking about is as life has become easier, right? Become more convenient, we want things faster. So everything's microwave. Everything's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, right? So now we're getting shorter and shorter. Even Carl Sagan spoke of like our time, our attention spans getting shorter and shorter. So it's interesting how, to your point, how this is happening the same way. And that's actually where we had that called the microwave generation, because it's like that. Got to have it now, instant gratification, no real future planning, because our culture is telling us that there is no future for you in a weird way, right? With the inability to buy a house or, to afford certain things.
Yeah, but I don't think we should blame wealth for that. So just because we're wealthy, I mean, that we're wealthy means that we can spend less time making money and more time on relationships. Right, and people
I didn't want to make that a causal relation that those things were connected, but it's just interesting
but
how
I think a lot of people might, right? A lot of people might think that because
thank you for clarifying,
we're just focusing on the now, and it's actually the other way around, right? So economics teaches us clearly that if you have nothing, if you're dirt poor, then everything that matters is the now, because otherwise you're not going to survive, right? So you only focus on the now. The richer you are, the more of a time horizon you have, the longer into the future you plan and you think, right? So that's when you start thinking that, oh, well, I can feed my family now. We can have a convenient, comfortable life right now. So I will invest in my kids' college education, or I will invest in having my grandchildren grow up and have a nice life and that sort of thing, right? We can think of these things. I mean, intergenerational investment, really, that's the effect of wealth. So I know a lot of people would want to have it the other way around, but there's like no argument for that, really. But
right. And I was trying to be clear, is people don't see themselves as being able to generate the wealth, so their time frame keeps shortening, if that makes sense. That's what I'm saying. It is out of, to your point, it is out of scarcity, not out of wealth, that it becomes more myopic and more short-sighted.
It's contracting.
Yeah.
Yep.
But this is really, I mean, if you consider the standard of living that we have, like any person today, basically, compared to a king 100 years ago, we're much richer than they were. Right? We're much, much better off. So it shouldn't be the case that we feel poor and therefore we are sort of in the hamster wheel and we're trying to. The reason we feel that, I think, is to a great extent that we have inflation, we have taxation, we have systematized theft of our belongings, and we can't trust that something is ours for a long time, that sort of thing, right? So in order to get the value out of the money that we have to spend it quickly, because there is inflation, because it's going to be taken, because it's going to be taxed, all this other stuff, right? So we can't really plan long term nearly to the extent that we otherwise would. This doesn't necessarily mean that we only focus on today, right? Because of course you can still afford to save for college education for your kids and things like that. But compared to where we otherwise would be, if we would have a sound money, for instance, that is not constantly inflated, if we would not be taxed to death in everything we do and everything every time we try to earn a little bit of money, then we would definitely be able to invest in a much, much longer time horizon, and our local communities, our regional communities, our families and friends, and coming generations as well. So I blame mostly the state. There's a cultural element there too, but there's a back and forth between the state and wealth and the culture, right? So they all sort of intermingle, and then they all affect each other as everything evolves into the future, right? And that's a big threat, really, of this Keynesian consumption now kind of mentality, that it undermines the beneficial aspects of culture and the beneficial aspects of how wealth affects culture, which is the opposite of short-sightedness, right? That we have long time horizons.
I just out of curiosity, have you ever heard of the Enneagram personality?
Say that again.
The Enneagram of personality.
No, I don't think so.
The
no.
Personality Enneagram.
Okay.
It's like I'm familiar, like the Big Five personality. It's like one of the types of ways to kind of determine your personality as a whole. It's called the Enneagram. They assign you different numbers.
I'm not asking you, but you're specifically more as it's kind of like a bridge to praxeology, I from my perspective, and you can think of it in governments as like a function, and each different governments have different functions. Like Taiwan, they were more investigator technology, the loyalist type 6 would be like, Israel, United States, Russia. They're driven by fear. They go through everybody's personal, information. They don't care about your rights. And then you got like Mexico and Ireland's type 7, and they go against fear. So they really could care less. They're kind of the more immature fear. But I was thinking, could we leverage something like that and, kind of trying to target and tie down government?
I don't know, but I'm willing to try.
Mhm.
I'm willing to try anything to tie down government.
Well, I guess
It's not something to consider looking into, maybe.
yeah. Well, I guess like what Andrew's trying to ask is like, is there any way that we could pinpoint and utilize behavioral patterns of personality types to try to choose better leaders, I guess. I mean, in order to leverage ourselves for a better future within our nations.
Yeah, I don't know if that is possible. I mean, it seems like it would come down to gaming the system in some sense, right? And I've been inside the system, right? So I was involved in politics in Sweden, and I don't think you can game the system because it's very, very focused on one thing only, and it's power. And then to try to get the right type of personalities into there, I mean, they're hesitant to begin with, probably the good people, and as soon as they enter, there's my experience anyway, that either they just get fed up quickly and pushed out because they will not become part of the system, or they simply just change their views and they become part of the Borg, and then you've lost them, right? So I don't think that you can change that system from within, even if you have a strong leader or a good leader or a good person or whatever. You're still going to see them from our perspective. You're going to see them as corrupted pretty soon, and they're going to make dealings on the side, and they're all this other stuff that you might not recognize right away, but that is going to be evident eventually. And that's how the system works. I mean, there's really only one way to deal with the system to solve this problem, and it's to get rid of it, throw it all out right away.
Could you
Thomas
maybe
Massey talks about how the binary system built into the architecture. Literally, you either choose that room or that room, and that's it. So, like, if you're not part of those two rooms, you're that guy standing twiddling your thumbs outside waiting while they make the decisions, and you either do need to change or you get forced out. It's a systemic issue and look, let's find someone who is actually worthy of these things. I was on the podcast once again with Joshua Lysick. Power to the people means power to the people who want power. That's all that means. It doesn't it's such a simple concept, but it is. Power to the people means power to the people who want power. We're not interested in that. We're interested in reducing the power. And it's so hard for people like us to get into systems like that because of our aversion to the system as a whole, because we know what it can become or what it can do to us or what.
But can we really dwindle that power? I mean, how do we start doing that? We've watched government on all levels and all across the world expand immensely. We pretty much have a global government. I mean, even if it isn't, it's de facto. So, I mean, where do we start to rescind government and go down to the smallest tier? Like, how do we, or is it even possible at this point?
Yeah, I agree with you that it seems impossible. And how can you take on this giant and all its power? And then when people are so brainwashed and all this other stuff. And I wrote a series of articles on striketheroot.com, which was the sort of a voluntarist website back in the day. I don't think it exists anymore. Where I addressed exactly that issue, that a problem for libertarianism is that we don't practice what we preach. So we do not try to liberate ourselves. Instead, we say we need to liberate the world because I'm not free unless the world is free. Well, most of the world doesn't really want to be liberated. They might not understand what it means, but what it does, what we're suggesting is that we shove freedom down their throats, and they don't want it. Right? They made that very
actually
clear.
What we're doing, we're shoving personal responsibility and accountability down their throats.
Oh yeah,
that's
the
what
other
they don't want. Because that's the work part. That's the work part that people are happy to give away to governments. You know what I mean? That's the core stuff is we just don't want the responsibility, the accountability. I just don't want to be blamed for this or that or the other.
Well, I mean, maybe Nepal wants some
Yep.
freedom. I don't know if they want the responsibility, but they do
It
want
has
the
to come from
freedom.
within organically like that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, what I argued there was sort of inspired by Konkin and agorism too, that you don't really need to liberate the whole world in order to be free yourself. You can get very, very far by simply liberating yourself. So removing yourself from the state's equation, and stop feeding the beast and keep it for yourself, and then set a good example and be a sort of an informal leader by what you do and how you do it. So don't pay taxes, don't get licenses, whatever it is, and trade freely with people, whatever others are okay with, right? Because you can't force them, of course. But by doing that, I mean, everybody is already agorist to some extent. A lot of people, they hire the neighbor's kid to mow the lawn or babysit their children or whatever, and they pay them a little bit. I mean, that's income that should be reported to the IRS. How many report that income? No, they don't. So they're breaking the law for money, right? But it's agorist. It's counter economics because what they're doing is you're acting in the black market, and everybody realizes that there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you can pay your neighbor's son to mow your lawn, or because that's a good learning experience, and they learn about life and everything like that, right? And the same thing with the neighbor's daughter or whatever, to have a babysitter or drive the kids to school, whatever it might be, right? And you pay them a little bit, and you've already taught them now that there's voluntary contracts, voluntary agreements. You both gain, and you continue doing it for as long as both gain. And no one will say that, well, you're breaking the law. This is terrible. You should really stop this. And I'm going to call the IRS on you. I mean, there's almost no one who would do that. So we already do it. The question is just, will you do it to a larger extent? And I mean, Konkin is arguing that you can't just stop cold turkey, because that means that you have to basically move into the wilderness somewhere and stay all by yourself. But what you can do is remove as much as possible in your daily life without completely turning your back on civilization, but more and more and more, and thereby set a good example and lead others into doing the same thing, right? Because you definitely can amass wealth much easier without paying taxes. So that should be obvious, right? But you can
At
also
least
create,
like 30% more.
yeah, exactly. And you can, I mean, there are ways of doing it without necessarily breaking the law or getting on their radar or whatever, right? And there are ways of exchanging with people without it being an actual recorded exchange that needs to be reported to the authorities. I mean, there's a big gray zone here too, right? That you can play with, and whatever you feel comfortable with. But and I mean, obviously, for the NSA listening to this, I'm not telling anybody to break the law, but but I mean, there are so many ways that you can stop feeding the beast and instead keep it for yourself and set an example at the same time. I mean, you check so many boxes by just living more like a libertarian and doing and practicing what we preach, rather than just preaching and then hoping that sooner or later we're going to get to a majority, and then, because I mean, why would we wait?
You have to be the change you want to see in the world. You really do.
Exactly.
Basically live this article right here. So from chapter 16.
Yes, that's the one. Exactly.
Yeah, sounds anti-politics. So
okay, yeah, there you go. That's one of the ones I was thinking of. Yeah.
Mhm. I knew I had it somewhere. So
No, I'll kind of get back to this thing I was talking about earlier. If you was like, law is focused on one specific type of fear. If you were to go to a different jurisdiction and create a crypto project or crypto anarchy project to try to subvert state power in a different district, do you think that would be a productive mechanism to flourish freedom across the board in a long-term framework?
I mean, it all depends on how you do it, right, and where you do it. So, I mean, I don't think there's a general answer. I mean, and what is the purpose of it? What are you addressing? Things like that, right? I mean, there are plenty of good things you can do. There are plenty of ways you can waste your time too. So you just have to be wise in what you choose to do.
Do you know about the situation with Roger Ver?
I know of the case. Yes, I don't know exactly what the situation is right now, but if there is
okay.
one.
I just didn't. I figured I'd ask what you thought your perspective on his situation was, if that was okay.
I'm not sure if he's had his hearing yet, or if gotten continued, or again, or whatnot. But he should be having a hearing soon, stateside, actually.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think,
and from a 50,000 foot perspective, Per, what are your thoughts on the case as a whole? I think is that what you're asking, Andrew?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about someone who does the steps they do and then tries to do what they do, and then still this thing happens, right?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely not an expert on this case, but I also totally sign up on Free Roger Ver. I mean, why not? I think it seems like what I've seen. It seems like pretty ridiculous case, really. But I can also see that the government's interest in making sure that it is a case, right? Because it opens the floodgates.
It lets them attack crypto.
It really exactly. And the issue is if you don't go after him, well, I mean, for them, it's you don't go after him. That opens the floodgates for others, right? And if you lose, right, and if you lose too, and if you go after him and you get him convicted and lock him up somewhere and whatever else, you set a precedence too. And then you can go after others. So, I mean, they have everything to win. To whether or not it's legal, they don't really care about that, of course. They care about the implications.
And that's the concern I've always had is I'm looking at from your perspective, I'm trying to live more libertarian and transfer some of my digital ones and zeros into actual physical assets or something, right? But there's a point, everything's monitored. If I go to buy precious metals, I have to give them my bank account so they know how much is in it before the transaction's done and stuff like that. It's like I'm looking at those control levels, and I agree with you. It's like, but they can get you for a penny off on taxes. So if they can get you for that, and you don't even know that you should have paid or something, for example.
And I mean,
this is how how do we uncouple that, or how do we decouple like in that?
Yeah, and I don't think there's a way of I mean, if you got nothing to hide, that sort of thing, that doesn't really exist. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of the book 3 Felonies a Day, which is the average.
Yes. Yes. We had Dan Furman on Taxation is Theft yesterday on the Politician show, and it was like, yeah.
So if it is the case that on average every American commits 3 felonies every day, then I mean, if they want to get you, they get you. And they of course they can plant evidence and they can make things up and they can have fake witnesses and whatever. If they want to do that, if they really want to get rid of you, but they can also just watch you for a little bit. You're going to break a bunch of laws, and then they're going to be able to make those violations into something that is enough for them to put you in a cage for the rest of your life. So, I mean, there's so many laws that we are simply not aware of all these laws that we're breaking, right? So if someone who is aware of them or just tweaks them a little bit, and that seems to be the case with the court system, and what lawyers do is tweak things and tweak the meanings of every damn word everywhere, right? So they can put anybody in jail if they want to. So I mean, if you and by they, I don't mean a big government conspiracy or anything like that, but all you need is.
But anyone anyone can encourage someone to file charges or anything. Yeah. William wanted to share about Roger Ver's hearing's been postponed to October. Yeah. And then he said, sadly, 100+ years.
140, I believe.
I mean, I'm going to call it a victimless crime, right? There's no victim here.
Yeah. 140. Another sad aspect, though, like Rogers is a economical aspect. I mean, the fact that there's whatever happens with Roger's case, we have literally no economic freedom when it comes to the government. If everything goes through and he's convicted, but we had I forget I'm drawing a blank on his first name, but Storm, he was just convicted of
Roger Storm.
Yeah, but he was just convicted effectively just for code. I mean, and so like his code, I mean, code is now like, is there free speech anymore? I mean, in our society, I mean, you can't really build anything really without the government's know-how. You can't really speak in any capacity. You can't express. You can't really do anything without the government getting into your business. So, I mean, what is your thoughts on that case right there? And I can't believe I forgot his name.
Well, I agree with you. The government is everywhere, right? The government is involved in everything, and it's surveying everything, and they're looking into everything and trying to control everything. I mean, I think that's one thing that is interesting when we're talking about these cases. We're talking about cases that involve some economic aspect or finance, usually, right? Something that has to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the cases, any sound regular person's morality would, if you look at the number of years in jail and all the sentences and everything like that, then the government goes after you much more fiercely if it has to do with money, right? So if you are in some sense avoiding to feed the beast, if you are maybe teaching others to how to avoid paying taxes, like Urban Shift, for instance, they will go after you with everything they got, and they will definitely seek. Maybe they can't seek the death penalty, but they're going to put you in jail for a couple of 100 years or something like that. Whereas if you murder someone, yeah, then they will put you in jail for a much shorter time period. So I mean, anybody's morality would be, well, wait a minute, even if I stole $1 billion, I should still not go to jail for as long as if I killed someone. That's a very different thing, morally speaking, for almost every living person, right? But the government tends to have the very opposite view, right? They go after you, and they go after you for the financial, economic crimes rather than the other ones, right? So because the government is the victim, or that's what they feel, right? And if you have murdered someone, you haven't murdered the government. You murdered someone else, and it's another slave. So it doesn't really matter, right? So of course they're going to do it to keep people satisfied with the court system and what have you, and they're going to put you in jail for a bit. But there's a cost to that too. But they really want to make an example out of you if you don't pay taxes, or if you figure out a way of keeping your property secured from the government and hidden or whatever else.
And that's what's kind of scary. Like, we live in a time like where it's truly anarcho-tyranny. Like, they go after you if the government is the victim, but they really could care less about enforcing laws. So they make all these laws for people, for law-abiding citizens, to fear both the criminal and the enforcement apparatus.
Yeah, but that's the point where the CBDC is too, right? The central bank digital currencies, that they should be programmable in the sense that you can't keep it anywhere without the government being able to not only see where it is, but determine whether it still exists, right? So you will have in your private digital wallet somewhere, you can have your coins that you earned, but then the government will say, nah, you're not allowed to use coins, or those coins no longer have value, and then it's just gone, right? So of course they're targeting the economic aspects of our lives more than anything else, because they can completely cripple us and push us out of society by simply, in this case, just probably a very simple command, right? Whatever you touch, because everything is going to be social security number and what have you, and then you can't use your money, or your money is suddenly gone. Look at that, or whatever it might be, right? and then you're out. Much like the truckers in Canada, they couldn't do anything at all, because if suddenly your credit cards don't work, you don't have access to your bank account, your cash doesn't work because it's also digital cash now. Well, what are you going to do then? You can take your stuff to the neighbor and ask them to trade with them. That's all you can do, right? You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You can't live pretty much.
And many countries have done this. Germany's one of them, where they buy back their marks and they give you back less. Like you give them 3 marks for every mark dollar they give you back or something, right? So imagine you wake up one morning and your bank account has, you had 21,000, now you got 7 in there, and you're like, what just happened? They're like, oh, we have a new currency, and the value exchange is a 3-to-1, and that's what we're doing. That's our readjustment. And like that, I mean, it's just so easy. Just literally flip a switch and everyone is affected.
Yeah. Andrew, you got something?
We have about 15 more minutes with Per. Per, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
If you guys have any more questions, because if you don't, I certainly have a couple more AI questions. But Andrew, you were on a roll there. If you had a couple more.
I was just gonna comment on that real quick. Is that when everyone's speaking the same language, when it comes to the monetary system, you always put yourself at risk with something like that. But I'd be interested to hear your AI questions.
And I got one more AI question actually to add on.
Go for it. Yeah.
When it comes to AI, how the fear of it is that it's going to take all of our jobs, right? So then you have the segue of UBI, but how is that ever going to be a good thing if, just like you said, the government can just shut it all off? So is AI going to pretty much, if it doesn't destroy us because of the technology and the super intelligence, inevitably, is it just going to destroy us because we have nothing because the government doesn't care? Wide open.
Yeah, but I don't think no kidding. I don't think AI is going to replace us all. I mean, AI does to white collar workers what previous inventions have done to blue collar workers, right? So we used to develop machines, and they would be stronger, more reliable, and wouldn't break as easily, whatever else, as a manual labor, right? So that meant that we could all transition into having other jobs where we used our brains more, and we started to deal with information and things like that. But most people are really bureaucrats more than actual value creators using information. And those sort of things AI can definitely replace people and make it better, right? So paper pushers and things like that, they never really contributed any value, and whatever control and follow up on figures and things like that, the whole management apparatus, that can be streamlined using AI because it's going to be automatic and it can sort of interpret things a little bit, stuff like that. I mean, any system or any type of operations or tasks that happens within sort of fixed boundaries, where everything is well defined, at least the boundary of it, like programming, those sort of things, AI can do really well because there's no open-endedness really to programming, right? It might seem so if the programming language is really powerful, that you don't know exactly what's going to come out of this, but that's just a limitation of your knowledge of the programming language. An AI that has full control of this, you can tell it, well, I want an app that does this and that, and if you push that button, blah, 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 and it can produce that without any bugs, right? And of course, with any backdoor that you want as well, if that is your thing. But it can definitely replace much of what programmers have done. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be able to make the judgment calls that programmers do also, but it's going to be able to replace a lot of it. I mean, I think we see that also in such things as simple customer service, simple troubleshooting, support, that sort of thing. When you call someone, an AI can help you just as well. And I don't mean those stupid things that are on the corporation's websites where you ask our little agent. because they can never answer a question, it seems like. But AI will be able to actually do that and help you with those things. Right? You don't need an actual person to do that. And that actual person today is probably someone working in Pakistan or something anyway. So that's not going to affect anybody here at home in that sense. There's also copy editing and things like that, checking grammar, producing text, producing information, those sort of things. And I already mentioned teaching, sort of mentoring students into learning certain things. It can do that too. But I think the one thing that it can't do is what is really the sort of the pinnacle, the peak of what humans do really well, and that is create new value. Because there's what AI does today, the LLMs, right, the large language models, they're really statistical engines. So they're looking at all these texts that it has been fed. It can find gaps in those texts basically and fill those out, which is a great thing. But it can extrapolate, so it can repeat patterns and things like that from the past. But it can't create anything novel, anything new. And humanity's progression from poverty to prosperity is one where we have constantly innovated. So we have figured out how to satisfy people's wants better, not necessarily invention, but innovation. That we have figured out new ways of making people's lives better. But that is really, really hard for a human, even though he's human, because you need to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer after you're done producing whatever it is you're producing, right? So I think the whole production, the formal production process can probably be handled and sort of coordinated by AI pretty well. Maybe not quite yet, but soon. But figuring out what should be produced, when it should be produced, and what it needs to be like, the product that is being produced, in order to satisfy people to the best extent possible. That's sort of that's what I study, right? That's the sort of entrepreneurial aspect of production. AI can't do that because it requires not only judgment of what might be a good idea, but also sort of peering into the future and seeing how will this make people's lives better on their own terms, which requires that you are very close to human yourself. And everything we do is really always aiming into the future, right? Whereas an AI only has the past to rely on. So in a sense, I saw David Deutsch, the what is he, physicist and philosopher or something like that, right? Comment on this, and I sort of stole it because I think it's a great way of putting it, that LLMs, what we today call AI, is really a step in the opposite direction of what we used to call AI. Because it is much more tied to history, much more tied to the data that has already been produced, and it can extrapolate from that. It can't create anything.
Right, it's not decision making like HAL. Right, it's not like HAL from 2000. Right, it's not like I can't let you do that. Like it's not doing that. It's not processing and then coming up with a decision off of that. It's just coming out with outcomes in a weird way, kind of like answering equations.
Right, and that is sort of one of the masterful tricks here is that AI, everybody thinks of sci-fi, just like HAL or Skynet or whatever have you. Those things, that's what they think about, because that's what AI used to mean. But with the large language models, they said, no, this is AI. And then they changed the term for what we used to call AI. Now that's AGI, artificial general intelligence, because these are good chatbots. And these are good at mimicking communication. So what they're really good at saying, what would a human say in response to this type of question? And then it goes through everything it has learned, and it will answer that question as a human. But that's always backwards looking, always repeating, always extrapolating from what we had before. But novelty and creation is always about saying, well, we know all this stuff. I don't think these parts over here matter. I don't think these parts are relevant. I think this other part here that is sort of maybe a little bit obscure can be made great. And I'm going to add another part that no one else has probably figured out is relevant, and I'm going to use that instead and run with it. And that is creation, right? That's novelty. That's creating something new and something potentially valuable. AI can't do this because they can't make this judgment, and you can't just at random say that, well, let's just try all these different things, and this time we'll skip this thing, and next time we'll skip this other thing, and then we try all these combinations, because that we can do that if there's no scarcity, right? If we have an endless time, endless resources, endless everything, then we can just
could it
go
do it
at random.
virtually though? I mean, in a weird quantum computer way, could it do all the options virtually? And then kind of, it's like how we determine ideas, right? The reason we come up with ideas is so that they die before we implement them and actually die, right? So we can kill off ideas before we actually try to implement them. That's the whole point of expressing our ideas, right? Could it do you think it has that possible capability?
Yeah, but right. No, I think it can in terms of technology. So it can evaluate, I mean, especially with quantum computers, I suppose, it can evaluate what would work. But the point is not what would work. The point is it going to be of value to people in a future situation? That's not
100% utility versus value. Yeah, it's utility isn't always the value, right? Like, will it solve the train track problem, right? The 5 people on one train and the one, like, how will it possibly solve the same? We can't even solve that as humans for the thousands of years that we've worked with it morally. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
my concern is, good.
There's a great example from the mid 70s that I use in teaching this too, because it shows you that value is subjective, and it's also really hard to figure out what might be of value. So it's the pet rock from 1975, where this guy figured out that you can sell rocks as pets, and he had a little manual how to treat them and how to train them and everything like that, and you got a box, and the rock was in there as a pet, and that was a smash hit, a success. He made a lot of money, and a lot of people had a great laugh. Would an AI, using what they know about the past, be able to extrapolate to saying, you know what, we should probably pick up a bunch of rocks and sell them as pets? No. That sort of value creation is definitely a human thing. And it seems pretty random and stupid in retrospect, but I mean, I think he sold like 1 million of these.
Yeah, I remember them very well. And I think to your point is, AI can't experience. It can only get what it's been input, I guess. And I don't think those certain things like awe, wonder, I don't know how you make those digitized. So maybe you incorporate with a cybernetics kind of way, where it's biological and technical, and maybe you can learn it that way at some point, but just curious. But to your point, you talk about the creation. I've heard it's the glitchiness that matters. I'm worried about the electron jumping over, skipping, right? And starting, there were 2 AIs that talked to each other in a completely made up language that they created. So it did create, but not out of processing to create, right? It just emerged almost. So
it kind of created gibberish.
Yeah. But it still accomplished whatever it was trying to do with the other thing, to the point where they unplugged it. They're like, all right, we got to unplug this. So just I guess as a final thought before we call this, thank you again for joining us, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such an honor. Just a thought on that, last thought on AI, maybe the glitch part, is that maybe more the concern than the thinking part, I guess, and overtaking us.
Well, I think, I mean, I wrote an article series on Mises.org about AI, that when I addressed the economics of it and the threat of it, and what are the problems and that sort of thing. I don't think that there's a way that LLMs can become an AGI, because it's based in the past only, and it needs to have some sort of future orientation, and therefore judgment and assessment of different course of action and things like that, right? It's not nearly. So
the last question, I guess, then is: are they doing something that isn't LLM, that is AI based, that's not LLM based, that we don't know about? right? Obviously, it's like, watch the shiny metal jingling keys over here while we're actually constructing the real thing over here. I mean, is that a thought that's going on?
Yeah, well, of course they
Oh.
are. I mean, there are plenty of people investing and trying to figure this out. But the thing is, we're trying to create artificially some kind of self-conscious software-based creature, but we don't have a definition of consciousness. I mean, that makes it a little bit difficult.
That's beautiful.
That
And
is true.
there's this school of thought now that consciousness is the foundation, not the emergent property. So I'm an emergent property person with consciousness, but there are people who say that consciousness is actually what it's like. If you can't use math to explain consciousness, because math is from consciousness, so you can't use the thing that it's from to explain the thing that it is. It's almost like using the word. So that's a Deutschian kind of thing too, is there are so many ideas to now how consciousness is and everything. And I think that's a perfect way to end it. Sir, do you have any final thoughts? And gentlemen, please share your stuff before we call it a day. I'm just so grateful that you shared your time with us again. Thank you.
I will say about the consciousness.
No, I mean,
consciousness cannot be proven scientifically. It's always philosophical. But go ahead, Per.
And then the question is, can you create it through software and algorithms? I mean, another question is, does it exist too, I guess, but...
Continue. Well, sir, we will love to have you. Always have an open invitation. Next release of your book, any article, anything, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to have you on so you can promote that. But as always, we're so grateful for your time, your mind, and your thoughts, and just all the openness of it. So thank you again for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Per.
Gentlemen, you guys have anything before we say call it a night?
Have me on.
Andrew, say your piece. Body.
I just
go for it.
I would like to invite you eventually, Mr. Bylund, to join maybe Zach and I and William to discuss some things in the future about post-labor economics. Is something that William is very focused on. So besides that, check Zach and I out tomorrow on the World Blockchain Roundtable at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. Eastern times at 10 Central. So
you are struggling, sir. I'd just like to say, God bless Andrew. He needs to go lay down before work.
Yeah, take it. So,
So you can catch me. Thank you again, Per. And again, invitation with us open. We would love to have you, especially to discuss post-labor economics. You can catch me at legacy_ZAK on X, and just catch the Legacy Right on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So, and catch World Blockchain Roundtable every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Right. Per, any final, how do we get a hold of you? What are the things, how are the best ways we can get your literature, purchase your books, all your primer and everything like that? What are the best ways we can get a hold of you?
Well, the best way is to follow me on X. I mean, it's just at my name. So that's the easiest way. And of my books, I mean, the not the latest one, but the one before that, How to Think About the Economy at Primer is made available for free by the Mises Institute. So you can either get it as an audiobook or as the digital version, or even the paperback. They will send it to you for free. So you just go to mises.org/primer and you order it there, and get a copy and get a bunch for your family and friends, and any economic ignoramus that you might encounter anywhere. Hand them a copy.
We do have a lot on Facebook for sure. So, and I will promote your book, The Seen, The Unseen, The Unrealized. Obviously, that's your biggest book, the newest one about regulations. What people do not understand about regulations, like I said when we talked last time, it's just so eye-opening. Nutritional information, all these like labeling, all this stuff. It's just so crazy how you pull the cover back and everything. So, Per, thank you again for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Another Knocked Conscious. I've been grateful. Please stick around. We're going to just close it, but then stick around. We'll just say our goodbyes. But gentlemen, thank you again for joining us. Have yourselves a great evening. Take care.